From being massively excited about his role to suddenly doing a full 360 on his stance only a few months before the release. Here's one film that Jim Carrey regretted the most. You can stay guessing, but I bet you didn't know. He hated being a part of Kick-Ass 2. Now, you gotta admit, this man possesses the most unique style.
This is just the beginning. Together we can make a real difference.
And can perform absolutely any comical role you were to throw at him. And this probably explains why Jim has gathered over 60 acting credits in the 4 decades that he's been working, but he still can't get behind his role in this film. In fact, this might have been one of the reasons that led him to quitting acting for good. After having sculpted his personality into various characters, the future of his acting career remains pretty uncertain, especially seeing how fairly serious he is about his decision. But the truly important question remains. Why did he hate his Kick-Ass role so much? I mean, I get it. His portrayal as Colonel Stars and Stripes in the film may not be as memorable as his other classic roles.
You want to hit with open palm and pivot. Open palm and pivot. You're going to grab the back.
I never made varsity football or got cast in the school play.
But it still added a pretty funny dimension to an otherwise forgettable sequel. His presence alone made that film worth sitting through. And during the filming, he openly stated how enthusiastic he was about having a secondary role. He told The Hollywood Reporter that he's having a lot of fun just putting himself into these little parts. But things were soon about to change. Just a few months before the film's premiere, he took to Twitter to declare he no longer supported it. So you might be wondering, why this sudden change of heart? The violence got a bit too much for him. In his tweet, Carrey revealed that he shot the film just a month before the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting, and it was this particular incident that made him shift his entire perspective. It was one of the worst mass shootings in history, and 26 people ended up losing their lives to it. And that's when the actor became a significant advocate of gun control. Not just that, but it also opened his eyes and made him want to speak out against movies that mimic excessive violence, just like Mark Miller's Kick-Ass. Since then, the actor has been more cautious in his casting choices, as you might have noticed in his later roles. He openly refuses to be a part of films that promote any type of violence. But there's more to his activism.
People should get what they deserve. Family living in the street deserves a hot meal. Inebriated college girl.
He has also used his comedic skills to communicate his point of view. If I were to give you an example from back in 2013, he appeared in the political comedy skit Cold Dead Hand, which openly mocked the NRA. I mean, he was so proud of it that he even shared it on his Twitter, where he took the opportunity to point out that Cold Dead Hand is for everybody who isn't ready to bend for their kids' safety, after which he mockingly apologized to anybody who may have felt offended by his words. So it's clear that he felt very strongly about this subject. That doesn't mean everybody else on the team understood his reaction. Executive producer Mark Miller was pretty much baffled at the actor's words. He just didn't know what brought this sudden change of opinions into the picture, and he took to Twitter to express how everything seen in the picture had been a part of the screenplay from 18 months ago. Yet the actor had never expressed such sentiments. He admitted that the movie has a very high body count and quite a lot of violence. But I mean, the movie's titled Kick-Ass. And the producer also pointed out how a movie with that title has to deliver what it advertises. Since it was a sequel to the first movie, it was expected that there will be blood and gore involved. But he didn't forget to mention how Jim had loved the first movie, which is why the sequel shouldn't have been such a shocker to him.
Thank you. You showed us that every man can make a difference. Without Kick-Ass, none of us would be here. That's from the heart.
So it's clear that the team was having a hard time dealing with Carrey's reaction. But then again, this doesn't mean they weren't concerned about real-life violence. Everybody cares about people dying, but there's a huge distinction between a documentary and fiction. Miller pointed out how Tarantino, Scorsese, Eastwood, and Borman are only some of the greatest names when it comes to action movies. And the one thing in common was the consistent use of guns. In Mark's eyes, an action movie is incomplete without there being weapons.
Yeah, there's a dog on your balls.
You want money?
because it just wouldn't do justice to the storyline. But then again, Kick-Ass 2 wasn't going to make it big anyway. It was probably one of his most underwhelming roles, especially when you compare it to the loads of iconic roles he's had in the past. Jim is mostly known for his exceptional sense of humor, and perhaps this action movie didn't fit his vibe, even though he doesn't even use the gun that he carries during the movie. He's just been perceived as an openly violent type of guy. If you were to try and think of all the roles where he's been the bad guy, it's usually a wickedness that you can only see in his eyes. A lot like his roles in The Cable Guy. Now this movie was a comedy, but trust me, there was a brand new edge to Jim's performance over here.
Well, look who decided to show.
You were supposed to be here 4 hours ago.
Was I?
He had a certain kind of wilderness around him, and it was one of the very first times that he wasn't just trying to make people laugh. Instead, there was a sort of evil that added a lot of personality to his character, and that too, without the use of any violence. You could tell that this man wasn't the good guy at all, but you could also tell that his evil simply stemmed from wanting to be noticed. And these kinds of harmless roles are probably what Carrey envisioned for himself. Actors like him love being in control, specifically because of how experienced they are with different genres. And sometimes he just didn't like when something contradicted his stance on things.
I knew I'd get you on the phone that way. Listen, that equipment is going to be history soon. Let's break the cherry on that karaoke machine.
This is exactly what director Peter Weir said about the guy, because he was quite brilliant with The Truman Show. Without a doubt, this was one of his most iconic roles. And the message it gave was also super significant, because it truly made you think about things.
Oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Yeah. Morning, Truman. Morning, Spencer. Hey, Pluto.
One of the most vital parts of this project for him was that it still managed to maintain the dramatic element throughout the film. But Weir mentioned how his diversity and talent made him sometimes interpret things in his way. Whatever was in the script, Carrey felt that there were better ways to do it. And so, before you knew it, he'd be out there trying to make things bigger than they had to be. For example, there was a scene where he tried a silent comedy and thought it was pretty brilliant in itself. It just didn't fit into the tone of the film, which is why it had to be scrapped. But there have been countless instances where he's taken control and made things better, like the way he managed to make you feel for Truman every step of the way. As you saw the character reach its absolute breaking point, it wouldn't have been possible to feel the impact if it wasn't for the actor's brilliance. But this same brilliance was probably why he just couldn't allow himself to feel comfortable with his role in Kick-Ass. So there you have it, folks. The movie he regretted doing the most.